Kaj imajo skupnega legendarni Mercedesov Roadster 230 SL iz leta 1963? Pa Peugeotov ikonični kupé RCZ in pa tale mala mestna Toyota. No, odgovor je Pagoda. In seveda ne govorimo o tistih klasičnih azijskih šotorih s špičastimi stolpiči, ampak o tej nagubani strehi avtomobila. A zakaj je takšna nagubana streha pri tem malem Toyotinem malčku? No, po eni strani pravijo pri Toyoti, zato ker je to cool, po drugi strani pa je ta nagubana streha poskrbela za občutno izboljšanje količnika zračnega upora, ki zdaj meri 0,31, to je toliko kot pri Yarisu in to je med najboljšimi v razredu. Po drugi strani pa lahko dobite tudi Aygat s platneno streho in pri Toyoti pravijo, da je to prvič v tem avtomobilskem razredu. Seveda smo malce zastrigli z ušesi, sej takšnih malčkov s platneno streho pa ja imamo dolgo vrsto na avtomobilskem trgu, ampak so nas pri Toyoti popravili. Ne, to je prvič, ker je to križenec najmanjšega avtomobilskega razreda. Aygo torej zdaj vozi za centimeter bolj oddaljen od tal, potniki pa sedijo za 5,5 cm više kot doslej. Ampak nikakor tukaj ne smemo govoriti, da bi Aygo s tem, ko je postal križenec, imel kakšne terenske namene, nikakor ne. Inženirji so se pri njegovem snovanju posvetili predvsem tistim koristim, ki pridejo prav pri mestni terenski vožnji.
SUVs are rough roaders, and we don't do rough roading here with this car. This is a city-oriented car. Why this higher body position in a city environment? Well, actually, first of all, our driver has a better field of view. So we have pushed this A-pillar a bit backwards as well. They can really see. And what is nice, when lifting up 55 millimeters, is that actually I can make eye contact with the driver. I'm a cyclist, pedestrian. Our design standards saying that it's at 1.65 meters. So basically the eye contact will be happening with most of our drivers. And actually that is why both the cars and the cyclists can go together on the road at the same speeds. The car is lifted up 55 millimeters, but in the front you can see these air spats. They're only lifted up 11 millimeters. It's enough to give sufficient ground clearance for curbstones and underground parkings, but they actually move the air under the car. But when they move the air under the car, they actually hit the tire itself. And actually there's three things that we have discussed together with the tire manufacturer. And that is the influence of the profile of the tire, but most importantly, this side component. So all the air comes here. Imagine if this was very bulgy and big, the air would be pushed out and create a lot of drag. And that's why this tire is, even though it's narrow, even this shoulder shape was super important to make sure we have this very good aerodynamic drag coefficient.
Give my life color, you give my life color, color, color. You give my life color.
Torej, Aygo hoče ostati klasičen mestni malček, ki pa so ga zdaj precej začinili. Ampak ne, začimb nisem omenil zato, da bi vam bolj poetično pripovedoval to zgodbo. Ne, začimbe so zrasle na Toyotinem vrtičku.
Juniper blue being more sporty and more masculine, it has red particles in the paint, so it can look purplish on the sun. And chili red is more warm and more feminine. It has blue particles in the paint. It can look orangish or more maroon in the sun. This is for the consumer who wants to stand out and to be bold. And for more sophisticated spices that are lower in saturation, lower in hue, we have ginger beige, warm, feminine, and we have cardamom green that is more cold and greenish.
In vprašali se boste, kakšna Toyota pa je sploh to, če pa nima hibridnega pogona. No, so tehtni razlogi za to.
Having compactness in mind, we had to make considerations. Can we fit a hybrid powertrain? Do we want to fit heavy batteries, making everything bigger in size again and more higher in price? No. Affordability and compact size are the two key pillars of an A-segment car. and therefore we have chosen not to implement a hybrid. However, we're very proud that still with a normal combustion engine, we are achieving very low fuel consumption of only 4.7 liters.
Pri tem je seveda pomembno tudi to, da si Toyota v resnici lahko privošči takšna odstopanja od lastnih usmeritev.
On a fleet average, Toyota is leading Europe in having the lowest CO2 per fleet of all its sales. This does give us an advantage that we can bring conventional technology at an affordable price.
Pozna se, da avtomobil ni več želen skupaj s Peugeotom in pa Citroenom, tukaj v notranjosti je postal bistveno bolj Toyotin avtomobil, tudi bistveno bolj resen, čeprav je majhen, ni več kot kakšna igračka. Velja nameniti poudarek na tem avtomatskem menjalniku. Ponavadi v teh majhnih avtomobilih dobimo robotizirani menjalnik, ki v praksi deluje tako, da se voznik potem med vožnjo med vsakim prestavljanjem kar malce zagunca.
A CVT means full intuitive automatic drive. There's no shift shocks. You don't need to care about shifting or clutching. Everything goes smooth as you want. Usually these kind of transmissions are quite big in size and do not fit in small engine compartments. For that reason we've developed the S-CVT, which the S stands for small.
Ampak tudi CVT-ji imajo svoje muhe.
You are correct to say that if you demand a quick input from your throttle pedal, indeed the engine RPM goes up. And sometimes journalists complain, we know that, because it gives a high noise and maybe an ilinear feeling. So we have worked a lot on the intelligence of this gearbox, that based on the speed we push the throttle and the amount we push the throttle, the engine will always rev up to the right RPM, to the right engine speed, so never jumping and then dropping back.
Čeprav je avtomobil zrasel, pa si seveda prostorskih čudežev ne gre obetati, ker vendarle gre za majhen avtomobil, katerega naloga je prav tem, da je majhen. Ampak ena podrobnost, tale prtljažna polica nekako spominja na tisto v Yarisu Crossu, ki jo takole zložiš in pustiš nekje v prtljažniku. No, v tem primeru imamo občutek, da bi jo polomil, pa jo lahko vendarle tako enostavno položimo na tla. Ko zapremo ta prtljažna vrata, pa dobimo Aiga, kot ga že poznamo.
From the rear, it almost looks like a black car if you don't look at the bumper. And that's the part of the Byton as an integral design execution. And we also have this black privacy glass that looks like one uniform element, and that is fully reflective in black. So we really like it.
Aigo X pa je z novo generacijo postal tudi outsider. Outsider v Toyotini ponudbi, namreč to je avtomobil, ki ga izdelujejo v Evropi, zasnovali so ga v Evropi in namenjajo ga samo evropskim velemestom, Londonu, Parizu, Dunaju. Outsider pa je tudi nasploh v avtomobilskem svetu. Namreč večina drugih avtomobilskih znamk ta najmanjši razred avtomobilov zapušča. Svoje luči večinoma usmerjajo v električne avtomobile, naj bodo to manjši avtomobili, ki so namenjeni izključno carsharingom, ali pa preprosto malim električnim avtomobilom, ki služijo kot drugi avtomobil v družini za vsakodnevne šviganja po evropskih velemestih. Nekako se ne moremo otresti občutka, da Toyota z Aigom nadaljuje preprosto zato, ker lahko, ker ima znanje in ker ima tehnologijo. Zakaj seveda ne bi pobrali vsega tistega, kar se še da postrgati?
Market analysis show there is still a big demand, or an even bigger demand, because of our competition is leaving the segment. Actually, this car will sell with more than 100,000 a year in the upcoming years. So that is our evidence. Customers are convinced in the product proposition that we have.
V Sloveniji bomo tega s pustolovskim duhom začinjenega Aiga prvič zapeljali zgodaj spomladi prihodnje leto. Imate pa že zdaj na voljo pustolovski duh v le malce večjem, a bistveno bolj prostornem paketu. Imenuje se Yaris Cross. Preverite ga z vašim naslednjim klikom.